Today I want to talk about my object, which is a woven fish. There's a picture here, and there might be a picture coming up, but it's basically it's willow. And those of you who don't know willow, it's grown a lot in Britain. It's a very fast-growing material, and it's been woven into a shape of a fish. And I'm going to talk a bit about where I got it from and then what the fish means to me in terms of participatory research. So I bought it about 10 years ago now from the community shop of Tyrigiffel community in Wales. It's what I would call an eco community. It's also like an eco village or a low impact development. Basically people living off grid and provide. Sorry, I do have a slight sniffle of I am in Britain. It's people living off grid, providing for all their needs, and very much creating their own world through their own efforts. Tyrigiffel is particularly interesting because it is on technically a greenfield farm site. So it used to be a sheep farm, where you're not normally allowed to build houses, even if they're deeply ecological. And I worked with the group called Lamas, who set up the community right from 2006 onwards. So it's been a real privilege. It's one of those really deep participatory relationships that you can't plan. And then you suddenly look back and you realize how long you've been together, how long the journey is, and you've been revisiting and working with them. And back then, my role in a participatory project was to explore what it meant to try and live very differently off-grid, off the land in Wales, and navigate the planning system. So a lot of my research was with the community trying to change the planning system. And eventually, the group did change the Welsh planning to one planet development. Which enables them to basically build houses on sites you wouldn't normally be able to build, but you have to prove you live off the land. So it's a very land-based, ecological, and quite hard way of living. So I've shown you the fish, and I just want to give you a picture of what Tyrigiffel feels like as well, because it's hard to communicate, I think, sometimes, and that's obviously the point of the story. So imagine what is there now. You've got a very hilly, old sheep farm. It's very green because it's West Wales, which is always wet, not to overgeneralise. You've got a lot of trees and a lot of bushes, and you've got a large lake in the middle as well. And in that lake, there's various fish and all sorts of things growing, but it's big enough that you can swim in it in the summer as well. And through this land, you've now got a range of different paths of different sizes, but none of them tarmacked. They're rustic, some wide enough for a car, but a lot of them are footpaths through the woodland, homemade steps, little bridges across to different houses. Each house has its own land. So some of the bigger plots are several acres wide, and some of the others, they have communal areas, so they're sharing the gardens and they've built houses nearer to each other. And right in the middle is the communal house. And this is a beautiful piece of architecture made from oak and straw bale with a green roof and big windows. And inside is where I bought the willow. And there's, in each of these plots, you've got different things being grown. You've got lots of animals, you've got lots of wildlife, because every family is trying to generate enough to survive. And they have to prove that they have harvested their own food and grown their own energy supply, be it through growing things to burn or capturing the wind or the solar. In order to keep the permission to live there. So it's very much an ongoing project. And I was trying to think about what it feels like to be there. If I'm standing on one of the plots, it tends to always be windy. There's something special about Welsh wind. It's always a bit damp, it's always a bit windy, but it's very green and there's a calmness, a lot of birds singing, the noises of animals munching, the quiet toil of different people chopping wood or fixing something. Things are always in construction there. So there are all these noises, but there's also a great stillness. You don't hear any traffic, it's too far away from any big roads. It's on the edge of a village called Glendur, but that's a very small village, not much through flow. So it's a very peaceful place. So why a fish? So, that's an eco-community, and I suppose I should make clear my research tends to be working with eco-communities to learn how they can create alternatives to capitalism. But within that, of course, it's never simple. It's always messy. There's always tension. So I'm really interested in how the participants navigate those tensions. What do they come up against and how do they move on? And can we replicate that, or can we take bits of it into other parts of the world? So the thing I love about this fish really is that it's grown. It's literally from the land. It's literally rooted from there. So this willow is grown there. It doesn't take long to grow willow. You can have a variety of types of willow, but it's very much around coming exactly from that place. And willow is quite easy as well, so to grow. So what I liked about it was very early on in the project when I was working there, because participatory research often involves giving your own labour as well, I planted a whole field of willow. And I remember it acutely, sticking in each little bit of stalk. And so I was really impressed to see how it had grown basically and turned into something I could now handle. And there's a real skill. This is just, I don't know if you've ever woven willow, but actually, having tried it myself, I'm now in awe that they've managed to do it, because you have to do it when the willow is wet. And in order to create the bends without breaking it and then weaving it in, and there's different bits together. To me, it was a boy that I bought it from. It was a young lad who'd grown up on the land, and so I wanted to celebrate the skill that was involved there. But also, it's a bit fragile actually. The willow moves because there's nothing else other than the willow itself holding it together. There's no stick, there's a nail, one little nail in the middle, so it kind of moves. And also, I've never been sure of what it was for. There's a question about purpose here. Do you hang it? I've hung it for a while. I've also used it as a pot stand. And at the moment, I got it out of my kitchen where we put hot pots on it. But it could also be a toy. So it's sat in different places in my house. And of course, it also represents the kind of food in the shape of the fish. There are fish in the pond. The whole community tries to live off the land and get as much food as possible from that land. So thinking about what does this fish represent for me around participatory research, and I'm just kind of drawing 6 themes from the fish itself. And I really welcome the opportunity to just reflect on this. So the first is, to me, participatory research is always very place-based. It's rooted, but it's also grown. It changes so much over time. So as I said, I've been working with Tira Gaffel now for 20 years. And in that time, I feel like our relationship has been a tree growing. There are different branches, different elements, and some of those are really strong. So I'm really connected with some of those community members, and we exchange emails. And then there've been a few breakages. There've been some ruptures in that community, and therefore in my own research. Last year, I had a conversation with one member who told me not to talk to somebody else. And I was thinking, how am I going to navigate this as a researcher? How do I carry on working with this community without being pulled into all of the internal politics of who's right and who's wrong? So there's that tree, and it sways and it moves and it occasionally cracks and it occasionally entangles itself and is messy. But ultimately, there's this strong central core that we've grown together. I really like that feeling. And it also reminds me to keep going back. You can never assume somewhere's stayed the same. The second is, and this is more around the fish, but also where the willow comes from, to me, participatory research is literally lived and dynamic in the body. A lot of what I've experienced in Tiragafu and with the people is around feelings, is around body, sensations of what it feels like to plant all those willow roots. To be honest, some of them really enjoyable and some less so when I stayed in a leaky caravan for a whole week. And I thought I really could do with better accommodation in my research because this is a bit grim, to be honest. And other times where I've sat on a field side having a picnic with some of the people I work with, thinking how glorious is this time. So a lot of it is also about noticing how embodied I am. And also that continues to change, so that I go back a different person each time, and I need to expect them to have changed and evolved as well. There's also a fragility, I think, to participatory research that the fish represents. If I'm too harsh with this, it will break. I need to care for it. I need to have a responsibility to maintain it if I want it to have still a purpose. So at the same time, it continues with my absence. So I can put this fish down, like I do participatory research sometimes, for months, maybe even a year. But that doesn't mean I don't have a responsibility to reconnect. And sometimes if I've been absent too long, I get an email. What are you up to? Why haven't you visited? You know, we need help with this now, Jenny, can you come back? And so I feel like that will be a permanent relation of care, a relation of responsibility. I can't just walk away now, actually, but I still need to maintain it. I can't assume it will be the same. So it becomes a coexistence. They're not reliant on me. They carry on in their lives, but equally, I'm still part of that. There's a coexistence here. The fourth is the skill. As I mentioned, this is harder than it looks to make, or maybe I'm just not very good, but I really struggle to do some myself. But with participatory research, of course, we learn by doing. We fail, we make mistakes, we make missteps, we unlearn and we relearn. And I think that skill, sometimes we don't talk enough about what it's taken to build that skill and what it takes to reflect each time on what's working and what's not, and maybe be honest about some of the mistakes we make, how we navigate some of those mistakes while holding on to what we're trying to do without just saying, well, it'll be a lot easier if I didn't engage anymore in this community because there's some politics I don't like. Holding on to the need to navigate that. And one of the greatest things actually only happened a couple of months ago, where I got an email from someone I've worked with for a few years in eco community. And these are surprising moments as an academic researcher, where they thank me for sharing their journey, which had been over 20 years, documenting, reflecting with them, inspiring, which was surprising because I looked to them for inspiration, helping them reflect and work through issues, which again, I hadn't realised I'd done. So I think there's a skill, sometimes we don't perhaps always know what we're bringing. And I really want to celebrate that, not to big up how great I am, because it's ongoing learning, but just to say that we are adding something within that. The fifth is purpose. Participatory research to me can feel really unclear sometimes. I don't know if you've had that point where you go, hang on, what am I doing here? What's the aim? Am I helping? Am I in the way? Am I advocating? Am I researching? And that feels like this fish. I'm not always sure what it is, but it's more than observation or standing alongside. It's getting into the messy bit. It is often activism for me. But ultimately, I always have academia in the back of my head, and I'm permanently and full-time employed in academia. So I need to be clear about my purpose with those I work with as well. And sometimes those purposes collide and overlap, and other times they split. There can be real tension when you're working with those who don't earn much money and spend an awful lot of time working very hard to then give up their time to help you. Again, why I often spend a lot of time doing quite mundane roles to pay them back, I suppose. Not to make it transactional, but to make it more equitable, if I can. So sometimes I can feel a bit lost. I actually emailed Thierry Gaffel last year and said, not sure what I can bring anymore. You know, you're established. Is it worth me coming? And I got a lovely response saying, we don't know what you can bring, but come anyway and let's see. And it reminded me again, oh, okay, I don't always have to have a purpose. These are ongoing relations, and let's see where it goes. And finally, I love the metaphor of the weaving together, the way the fish signifies how participatory research often feels to me. It's a weaving of our skills, our concerns, our aspirations, sometimes into one thing, other times into different things, like that tree analogy. Even if it's fragile, even if it's unclear of purpose, we're still building towards something, and that's what forever gives me hope. So there's quite a lot that I've taken from this fish, and I really appreciate the prompt to reflect on this. Thank you.